Alright, um, Namtro here. I'm going to talk a little bit about items. I feel like it's one thing that streamers really haven't had a chance to talk about with people. And I ran into this the other day where a guy came into my stream and he was a newer person to the game and he had a lot of questions and I helped him with a lot of the questions. And it got me thinking that it'd be a good idea to talk about items a little bit. Just a good idea of what to look for on items. And, you know, a lot of these items that I have right here aren't exactly great. These were all when I was first getting into the league. So a lot of it was really good at the start, and you could sell it for a decent amount at the start. But at this point, you're going to be lucky to get an elk for most of it. But it's still good reference to some things because they do have good stats for some parts. So that's why I'm going to go over the items that are inside here. Um, Alright, when you're looking at an item, there's a couple main factors, and you see stats and it can be really confusing at first. Um, what I typically look for on armor pieces, rings, amulets, anything that's not my weapon basically, I look for health, resist, and then maybe some rarity if I'm making a magic find character. If you need the stats, I'll look for the stat that I need. And typically you can get a lot of stats on a lot of your gear. Strength is probably the one that you can see on a lot of gear. You can get int and dex on your gear. Um, and for instance, the reason why, okay, these boots probably could have been pretty good early on in the league, but right now, one resist, one life roll, and the life roll's not even that great, especially for its level. Like, it shouldn't even be in the stash. And what you're looking for once you get higher level is larger rolls. And these rolls can be different between, like, I guess the best way of doing it is just showing you kind of like, I'll just go to the Path of Exile's website. There's better places to go than the Path of Exile website to see a mod compendium. Actually, there was a mod compendium. I just saw it. And I can actually link this to the video when I'm done. And this actually might help a lot of people. Basically, this little tool, I'm not entirely sure who started it, but it's nice because it lets you know what levels have what mods on them. And I'm not entirely sure how up to date all this is. So, it might not be super up to date, but it gives you a good idea of what's going on. And I think this one actually has all the high rolls. I need to find the list that has just, here we go, PoE mods. And it just has a list of all the mods on it that you can roll and the different levels that you can find it on. And it's just super useful. And basically, in the early parts of the game, you're probably not gonna run into huge life rolls. So basically, until you get to Merciless, you just want to find life, you want to find resist on all your gear. It's resists give you so much survivability. They balance the game around having max resist. So if they balance the game around having max resist, that means any elemental hit that you take is balanced around you having 75% resist. So if you take that hit and you're not maxed out, that hit's going to be doing so much more damage. Because they're not balancing it with you having zero resist. Because if they balanced it that way, you would end up way too tanky by the end of the game. Like, mobs would do nothing to you. So they can't balance the resist around that. They balance it around you having max resist. So that's why resists are so important. And it's one thing that people miss right away. They make glacier builds because it's okay to do in normal. Like normal, it doesn't really matter. Cruel, you can maybe get through the first half of it with a glass build. It gets a little rough once you hit the end of Act 2. And when you start going through the harder parts of Act 3, especially like Piety. Piety, when you're doing the Crematorium Piety, that lightning damage is absurd. And if you don't have max resist for at least lightning, at that point, you're gonna die. And that's all there is to it. That ball hits so hard. So, I mean, you know, if you're a good player and you've been playing for a while, you might be able to squeak it out. But for the most part, it's a good idea to have max resist for most of the points. So sacrificing your damage for resist is usually a good idea. I was gonna go down here to life and see. So right now I can probably only find up to here. Um, I did. Okay, I should have picked up those amulets then. There's amulets I ran into earlier that were item level 73. They could have rolled the 100 to 109 life roll. But yeah, I can link this. I'll link it in chat right now for the Twitch viewers. You can look at that if you want to. It's a nice tool. I'm gonna put it on my YouTube vid that I'm doing right now. And basically the next set of stats you're looking for on an item, at least if it's an armor piece, you're gonna want to find percentage armor and flat armor, or you know, if you're doing evasion, percentage evasion, flat evasion. If you're doing hybrid, so on and so forth, or ES, you know, you get the idea. You want the item to end up rolling flat and percentage. The reason being is that percentage scales up the flat that ends up spawning on it. So you might have a chest piece that normally only has 400 armor, right? If you only have the percentage one, or if you only have the flat one, let's say you had the flat like 400, it'd have 800 armor. Or if you had the flat 100, you'd only have 800. But if you have both of them together, they scale together. So you would have about 1600 instead, which is a huge difference. So it's just something to think about when you see these stats on items. There's many different stats to look at, and it can be really confusing at first. And for the most part, those are probably going to be the things that will get you the furthest in the game. Next, I would focus on either leech, maybe a little bit. I mean, it completely depends on your build. If you're a physical build, I'd maybe think about leech and accuracy. If you scale off of flat physical damage is really good, because it's flat physical damage scales off of all your damage nodes on your tree. So if you end up having like over 100 to 200% damage on your passive tree for some reason, 200% is a bit wild, but if you do, that means like if that ring rolls 7 to 14, it's actually 14 to 28, and then that can be multiplied by like more physical damage, so it even goes up even more. And then it also gets affected by your attack speed and stuff. So if you're attacking super fast, all that flat damage adds up. And I think it's one thing people overlook a little bit, and it's one thing that I'd like to bring up. So it's another stat that I feel like is a little underlooked. And then accuracy. Accuracy is kind of hard. I mean, I'm not even where I want to be on my character. My spectral throw character only has 86. I mean, I'm level 78, so my accuracy is probably pretty fine for the maps I'm doing right now. I'm only doing 67 and 68 maps. I know when I was around that level, I had about a 90% accuracy rating. So, you know, it's just something to think about. The next thing I should talk about this too. The same thing that happens to armor, where you can get like a huge. See, this only has a percentage armor, but then if I find something, and that has only flat evasion, so keep that in mind. I'm trying to find something with a double armor roll to give you an idea. No, I have some. I just sold a chest piece that would have been perfect for this. I vendored it, and It's earlier in the stream, so if you want to go back and look at that, it's fine. But I know I can find something. I should have had this all set up. Okay, here we go. My old shield. Or I could have just showed you my shield. I don't know why. Basically, right here, see how the flat armor is 369, and then there's 69% increased armor on top of it. This shield normally probably would only have like 400 to 500 armor without the flat roll and the percentage roll. But because of the flat roll and the percentage roll, it was able to get above 1,000. And like my shield is probably a better example because it's even, it's even more. And the thing that's silly about mine is it only requires level 51, which is kind of silly. So yeah, that's what I was talking about with that. But the same thing can happen with weapons. Weapons have a flat roll, which is the flat physical, and this is where you can get a lot of flat physical from, is right from your weapon. You want to get a flat physical, you want to get a percentage physical, and then you also want to get attack speed. Those are a lot of things to want from a weapon, and they're actually really hard to get. I've tried to craft items and spent a lot of currency trying to do that, and it can be a big waste of currency. So I wouldn't suggest trying to do this yourself. I suggest saving up your currency and buying ones that other people either made or found. Like my dagger isn't exactly where I want it to be either, but it does at least have flat physical, percentage physical, and attack speed. The accuracy, that accuracy is actually not even part of the percent physical. This only has 2 prefixes on it. It could have a 3rd prefix where it'd roll even more accuracy and more physical. I don't know if I would exalt this dagger, mainly because I don't like the resist on it. For my weapons, I want my weapons to have only offensive stuff on it. The only thing I'd be okay with is if it had leech on it, and you can get a massive amount of leech from your weapon. You can get I think it's like a 4% chance on not 4%, a 4% life leech on your one-handers. I think I can get up to 6% on your two-handers. Don't quote me on that. I'm not entirely sure. I haven't studied all this down to science or whatever. I mean, if you want to, you could go look for it for yourself. I'm gonna give this this whole mod compendium inside my video. It's something I've seen other people use, and I use it too. I find it to be very useful. All the information might not be up to date, although I think you could go in. I don't know if this one. I don't think this one's editable. Somebody else manages it, so I don't know how up to date it is. I haven't really checked everything, but for the most part, it seems pretty up to date. It at least gives you a good idea of where things are. So I mean, even if the level isn't exactly where you want it to be, you could at least know what you can get, the different tier brackets, and then you can compare that to the item that you have. So I mean, it's just something to think about. Trying to think of what else. Oh yeah, for boots. Boots are a little more complicated. I feel like they're kind of boots and gloves are a little more complicated. Especially for physical builds. Physical builds, gloves are complicated, but they're not complicated in a spellcasting build, at least in my opinion. But boots, the reason being is because they can get movement speed on them, and you want movement speed on them. And not only do you want movement speed on them, but you also want evasion or whatever stat you're stacking. You also want resist, and you also want life. And that's kind of hard to get all of that on one pair of boots, and that's why I still have these boots. But even this isn't exactly what you want, because you also want that high evasion roll. So these aren't worth a whole lot, and I'm not entirely sure if I'm even going to keep them because they've been sitting in my stash, and I've had PoE XYZ up for a long time, and no one's ever really messaged me about them. So I'm probably going to end up vendoring them. But just to give you a good idea, these are pretty close to being pretty good boots. They could have another resist on them, or the percentage evasion would be really good. If it was, a higher item type, item base type. It's only level 55, so I mean that's not good either. So I mean there's things about the boots that definitely can improve by a lot, and that's why they're not worth that much. Um, as far as anything else goes, though, I could talk about daggers a little bit in case you're wondering about my build. Daggers and wands are really hard to roll. The reason being, like, I'll show you two daggers. Like, there's this dagger, and then there's my dagger. My dagger has a lot of physical damage on it. It didn't roll any spell damage on it, right? This dagger has a lot of spell damage on it, no physical damage. But then it has this 3% physical attack damage to Leech's Life, which would be useless to a build that uses that spell damage. So, and that happens on wands too. So, like, depending on what you want from a dagger, it's going to be really hard to get what you want. And you'll find these daggers that just have really mixed stats. Like, this dagger has really good things for spells, but then it has random stuff like accuracy and lightning damage on it, which doesn't really help. The only thing that this maybe could work for is a mediocre cast on crit dagger, but for that you're going to want critical strike chance. And that's not on this dagger. Hopefully I'm pretty clear about all this. I've thought about this pretty extensively. Like for instance, like this dagger, this would be pretty good for a cast on crit. Not the best because the crit chance still needs to be higher, but at least it's better than a base crit chance. And then it also has that lightning roll, which is really good. You could use that with elemental equilibrium if you wanted to, and use that with spectral throw, and that would work really nicely on a cast on crit build. So this dagger could actually work really nice for that. And not only that, it has spell damage on it. So it's respectable. The only thing that's missing is probably attack speed. But since I think it already has... Oh, it still has the suffix too. So I mean, I don't know why you'd want to waste an exalt on that, but if you really wanted to, you could. So yeah, I just... Before I went through all my stash tab and basically got rid of everything, I just wanted good examples of what you're looking for on items. And the reason being is, like I said earlier, I feel like people haven't really had good examples out there. I know there's a couple videos out there about all this, and it's kind of hard, especially when you're new, to figure out what's good and what's bad and what's worthwhile. And that's why I felt like this video would be something good for the people that actually want to get more out of the game. I normally stream between 9 p.m. and 1 a.m. The only nights where I'm probably going to end at 1 a.m. are nights that are I have school the next morning. I have school tomorrow morning at 8, so I have to get up early. Otherwise, I'd probably be streaming for a bit, like probably a couple more hours even. So I have no problem staying up later. I want to stay consistent in that time slot. And I was late today. I probably will be late Thursday nights too. So forgive me for that. But if you enjoy the stream or if you enjoy the videos, just let me know. And I'm going to try to get the content out there, try to get better at talking about the content. But yeah, thanks for watching this.